If I asked you, what is the most famous dinosaur you know? Most of you would answer, T-Rex. Of course, T-Rex is more famous than fire on a flag. But what if I told you that the T-Rex you know is completely wrong? The green monster standing upright like a kangaroo, dragging its tail on the ground and constantly baring its teeth, this image is nothing more than the imagination of scientists from more than 100 years ago, when they barely knew anything about it. The reason is that the first person who drew T-Rex only had about 10% of its skeleton, and the rest was pure guesswork. Then Hollywood and Disney came along, took that wrong drawing, and stamped it into people's minds for decades. But the truth that science presents today is completely different. Before we begin, if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you receive our videos as soon as they are released. And if you like puzzle games, don't forget to download our new game Jadada Kalamat from the Play Store. You'll find the link in the description box. To understand the topic, we need to go back in time a bit, specifically to the year 1902, in Hell Creek, Montana. The first two people to discover T-Rex samples were Barnum Brown and Richard Lull. At the time, all they found were 36 bones, which is roughly 10% of the skeleton. These included a lower jaw, a thigh bone, some vertebrae, and the pubic bone. The bones were extremely massive, to the point that the scientist Henry Osborn, when describing it, named it Tyrannosaurus because its size surpassed any carnivorous animal that had walked the earth at that time. The problem appeared when they started trying to draw what the animal looked like in 1905, especially with the very limited information they had. William D. Matthew, a colleague of Osborn, was the first to imagine the shape of T-Rex. He drew it with an upright body, standing like a kangaroo, dragging its tail on the ground, with small legs that wouldn't help it run. As we said, the drawing was pure speculation. If you look closely at the illustrations, you'll notice that the bones they actually found were colored dark, while the lighter bones were simply artistic interpretation. What's surprising is that they managed to connect the very small arms they found to the rest of the body, even though logic suggests they could have thought those bones belonged to a completely different animal, or even a juvenile dinosaur mixed in with larger bones. Yet they cleverly concluded that this was the anatomy of that strange animal. Despite the drawing being primitive and filled with gray areas of scientific ignorance at the time, it became the foundation for the wrong image that persisted for many years. About 10 years later, in 1915 to 1916, the museum commissioned the artist Charles A. Knight to paint a full T-Rex based on the available fossils. Charles Knight was one of the most famous paleoartists of his time. However, if we examine the painting closely, we'll see that his main reference was the iguana lizard, from the large cheek scales to the shape of the mouth and even the scaly lips and striped tail. People at the time believed T-Rex was just a giant reptile, so they copied the large reptiles they already knew. Not only that, but Charles Knight made a major anatomical mistake in the painting. He drew T-Rex with 3 fingers instead of 2. The reason was that he assumed that since T-Rex's carnivorous relatives had 3 fingers, it must have had the same. Despite the many scientific errors in the painting, it became the iconic image through which people viewed dinosaurs. Of course, cinema didn't miss the opportunity and exploited Knight's image, creating a new box office star. The beginning was in 1918 with the film The Ghost of Slumber Mountain, which was the first true appearance of T-Rex on screen. In the film, T-Rex fought Triceratops, moved slowly and heavily, dragged its tail, and, strangely, kept licking its lips after eating, like a cat. Scientific research later confirmed that this behavior is impossible. Studies of the hyoid bone that supports the tongue in T-Rex relatives showed that their tongues were fixed to the floor of the mouth and couldn't move freely. In other words, it couldn't even stick its tongue out, let alone lick its lips. Despite these errors, the film was a huge success. Imagine, in 1918, someone shows you a movie with a dinosaur. Then came King Kong in 1933, which cemented the image of T-Rex as a monster with crocodile-like skin. For millions of people around the world, movies were their only source of information about dinosaurs, which made correcting these misconceptions later a very difficult task for scientists. In 1940, Disney decided to raise the level of competition by producing Fantasia. This time, they consulted paleontologists to advise them on the appearance and movement of dinosaurs, and the result was impressive for its time. However, despite consulting scientists, the film brought together animals that lived in completely different eras and places and made them fight each other in one location, like the battle between T-Rex and Stegosaurus, despite the huge time gap between them. But it was a movie, and action rules. In terms of design, T-Rex in Fantasia kept its green color and upright posture, but an important change occurred: the lips disappeared. Previously, it was shown with lips covering its teeth like lizards, but Disney presented it with exposed teeth all the time, whether the mouth was open or closed, to increase the excitement. Disney's version, the green animal dragging its tail and constantly baring its teeth, became the standard image of T-Rex. Until the 1970s, the stereotypical image of dinosaurs was that they were cold-blooded, slow, and stupid creatures. But during that time, a scientific revolution occurred, led by John Ostrom and his colleague Robert Bakker, known as the Dinosaur Renaissance. Researchers turned the table completely by presenting evidence that dinosaurs were not sluggish reptiles, but active, intelligent, warm-blooded creatures. This idea changed everything: posture, movement, and even social behavior. We began to see T-Rex not as a reptile dragging its tail, but as an animal with a horizontal posture, its tail raised in the air, strong legs moving quickly and energetically. This time, the proposal was based on anatomical studies of bones, which showed that T-Rex's spine was designed to be horizontal, not vertical, and that the muscles of the legs and thighs were more similar to birds like ostriches than to lions or reptiles. The old depiction with a flattened tail dragging on the ground was replaced by a rounded, muscular tail used as a counterbalance. This shift was a rebirth for T-Rex and paved the way for the modern interpretations we know today. When Jurassic Park was released in 1993, the whole world looked at T-Rex in a completely new way. The film was based on the new ideas of the dinosaur renaissance, so T-Rex appeared as a fast, intelligent animal with a balanced, horizontal body. The design also changed the mouth. Instead of exposed crocodile-like teeth and bare gums, they created a soft tissue covering around the mouth, a middle ground. This film cemented the visual image of dinosaurs for the general public, despite researchers disagreeing on some details, especially the exaggerated speed and agility. After the film, and with the discovery of well-preserved specimens like Wankel Rex and Sue, biomechanical studies showed that the cinematic portrayal was exaggerated, which is understandable for action. However, what they got right was T-Rex's horizontal posture, just without the exaggerated agility. The film coincided with real discoveries that made both the public and scientists pay more attention to details. It was a landmark film and led to the emergence of an entire generation of dinosaur enthusiasts. One of the most controversial issues regarding dinosaurs is feathers. In 1996, a carnivorous dinosaur called Sinosauropteryx was discovered, and scientists said it had feathers. Later discoveries confirmed that feathers were common among small carnivorous dinosaurs and were used for insulation, not flight. The big surprise came in 2012 with the discovery of Eudyrannus, a relative of T-Rex but older, over 7 meters long, and covered in feathers like those of an emu. This led researchers to suggest that if T-Rex's ancestors and relatives had feathers, then T-Rex might have had feathers too. Drawings began to appear showing T-Rex like a giant fluffy chick. This also led to speculation from supporters of evolution that the chickens we eat today are descendants of dinosaurs like T-Rex. As for our position on evolution, as you know, we do not believe in the kind of evolution they believe in, the one that claims species change into other species. In 2017, opposing evidence appeared. A study was conducted on a T-Rex skin specimen called Wyrex, which contained preserved skin impressions from different parts of the body, such as the neck, pelvis, and tail. The surprise was that all of them showed scales, with no trace of feathers. This led specialists to adopt a middle ground: large animals retain heat more easily and don't need extra insulation, so their bodies wouldn't be covered in feathers, while smaller animals would need feathers to stay warm. Therefore, T-Rex may have had feathers when it was young, gradually losing them as it grew. This is what the latest scientific models have adopted regarding T-Rex's appearance. Finally, the journey from the terrifying kangaroo-like monster to a realistic predator teaches us that science is not a sacred doctrine sent from the sky. Claiming absolute reverence for science without understanding it is meaningless. Science is not just memorizing facts, it is a continuous process of searching for truth. Every day, new evidence emerges that changes previous assumptions. The picture becomes clearer, but the story remains open for future discoveries.